situation of translation. You can just indicate. Now, I've been given 5 minutes, but as I'm growing older, I realize that when people say Marcus, they say CPSU or the Unity Movement or the Yuchichen Club. Neville was his first collective was his family, and so is all of us. We mustn't forget our families. And I look around and like the Omars and the Bachas and wherever, they come from families. In fact, the more I look around and see what's happening in the world, whether it's Palestine, wherever, it's our families. And then the community, he was born into a community. That's his second collective, in the street. Like I was born in Grahamstown, and the road is Albany Road. And the next collective was the church. And then, of course, the sports rugby club. In the Eastern Cape, you don't have any other sports except rugby and a bit of cricket in summer. And those are very important collectors. And the first thing he did, and very few people speak about that, like I did when I came to Cape Town. You first look for your church. I was a member of the Congregational Church. I was looking, where's the Congregational Church? Because when I left home, my family told me, "Gaan kerk toe, go to church." And then the next thing is, where's the rugby club? You join the Wanderers at Cities. And those were the collectors that influence our lives. And then he also ran into the Unity Movement Teachers League. That's the next level. And I think it's very important for us now to understand that. And that's why for what we've come to realize, movement building is about building communities. Afterwards comes the party. And I'm going to be challenged on that. Oh, he's confused when he's growing older. He's becoming increasingly confused. And of course, join the Cape Peninsula Students Union. Cape Peninsula Students Union, the CPSU, was very important in our lives. It was the first organization where I became conscious of a broader problem, racism, etc., etc., etc. And Neville was part of all that. That's why I said the 5 minutes, because when you read the history, and this beautiful history been written by a young man, Escher Gamadze, because it captures the collective in which Neville became politically conscious. I understand why there's a lot of emphasis. Neville wrote this and Neville wrote that. But if it wasn't for that collective, I believe all the other things would not have come about. Because it's in the collective, whether it's the Unity Movement, the Teachers League of South Africa, the Fourth International, etc., etc. Internationalism, whatever. And I think that is what I would like to emphasize, Kelly. It's the collective. Because increasingly now, all you hear about is the history. But even on the island, by the way, I have come to the history of Robben Island, the history of Mandela, and a few others. And it's about Robben Island is a male story. Nothing about the women. Nothing about the almost 3,000 inmates who passed through the gates of Robben Island. I'm not even talking about the 300 years of before that. And then, of course, there was Workers' Organization for Socialist Action. There was National... So, and then, of course, later in life, and of course, we're also a member of SACAD. I see Kathy here, I see Rahmat, I see other people from SACAD who are here, Lindia, Derek, etc., etc. So these are all information, and I think it's very important because we tend to be forgetting the collectives in which we have grown up. Because in fact, the other thing I've become very interested in, this thing about party building. There cannot be a genuine party, vanguard Communist Party, if there's no linking with the self-organization, self-organized formation of the working class and communities. The 100 more times working class organization, what sustains our communities today is the self-organized formation of the working people. And I must just add, the main activists in those formations are women, by the way. They run the kitchens, they fight the gender-based violence, they fight the gangsters, they fight the state, whatever, whatever. Read any, in fact, some histories now, from awakenings in the labor movement were women. And I really want to end, it's my 5 minutes up. Okay, last point. Neville was a product of a community of collectives. And he made a wonderful contribution, whether it was children or youth or whatever. He was a product of a collective, his family, his community, his sports, his church, the socialist movement, internationalism, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Comrade Marcus, for your contributions and for your continuing willingness to be present for us younger generations. So just again to say welcome, everybody. It's really wonderful to see you all, and it's a great pleasure to be here together. I know it's the end of a very long year, but thank you very much for coming out today. It is an enormous pleasure to have comrades here from all over the world. We are gathered under the sign of Abolition Internationalism. And abolitionists are basically communists who take seriously how criminalization and securitization and militarization are some of the key ways in which contemporary capitalism works. But first and foremost, we are a collection of communists, anarchists, socialists who are trying to understand the contemporary moment of capital and how to fight it. And I think it's a very beautiful, it's very beautiful to bring not only Neville, but all of the movements that he was part of together with this collective of internationalists, because we're all of us, and I think everyone in this room, interested in the very profound relationship between study and action. And in fact, Uncle Marcus and Uncle Neville were drawn into the security apparatus of the apartheid state because they understood that the reading group was absolutely important, but not enough. And the movement between the reading group and the guerrilla group was what made them dangerous in that historical moment, and I think continues to make us dangerous today. So it is my great pleasure to welcome this particular arrangement of internationalists to the first panel today. We will be asking the question, where is left internationalism now? I'm not going to spend too long on that question because each of them has prepared a few thoughts to get us going in the conversation. So they'll each speak for about 5 minutes. And I'll ask you also just to introduce yourself and where you're from as we go, because I don't want to take too long on the bios. There are bios floating around the room somewhere if you want to have a deeper read about where people come from. So I'm going to hand over to Emmy first. Welcome.
Thank you. Kia ora, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. That's not English, so don't worry too much about translating that. My name is Emmy Rakete, and I'm an Indigenous Māori woman from New Zealand. And it's a real honour and privilege to be in South Africa for the first time in my life. The struggle against apartheid and the struggle against the white terror regime was a huge inspiration to the Māori people in our struggles back home against our racist government also. And one of the key kind of episodes in the kind of radicalization of the Māori sovereignty movement was in 1981 when the New Zealand state violated the cultural boycott of the regime. Violated the cultural boycott of the regime and invited the Springboks to tour the country with an all-white team. This led to a national campaign amongst the workers of New Zealand, Māori, immigrant communities to physically fight the police, to shut down the stadiums and to make the tour impossible. In the process, we learned all of the tactics necessary for confrontation with the pigs in the street, and that spirit has remained alive, and we've tried to carry it forward in the work that I do. So when I was asked to talk on this panel, I wanted to think about what does left internationalism mean today? Is left internationalism doing well? Is left internationalism doing poorly? Obviously, poorly. This would be the People's Republic of South Africa if it was going well. It would be from the People's Republic of New Zealand if it was doing well. Stand up? Yeah, we can stand up. Is that right? Cool. I'll stand. I'm a pacer, so I'll kind of walk back and forth a little bit. So left internationalism is not doing well, but that doesn't mean that left internationalism has ceased to exist. I'm here because I'm a left internationalist. You're all probably here because you're left internationalists as a morality, as a political orientation, as a belief. Left internationalism is strong. The willingness of our comrades in America to encamp, to fight against their government, their institutions' complicity in the genocide in Gaza is one example of how left internationalism will make well-fed Americans happy to fight cops, to put their bodies on the line, to be horribly injured. Clearly, left internationalism is a true, living, moral force in the world today. What we lack is the political means to be left internationalists today. And when we look at our history, I think we can start to piece together a theory of what we are lacking here. When has left internationalism been strong? It's been strong when it's been enshrined in our own institutions. The Workers' Internationals, obviously exemplified by the Third International led by Lenin, and after that the Comintern for the period of its existence were two examples of moments when the left was able not just to be internationalists, but to do internationalism. And the difference is that our work was done in institutions which we owned and controlled. Our internationalism could be enshrined in institutions. We were independent of the reformists, the lesson which South Africa is learning now. We were able to act programmatically. All of these elements are currently missing from left internationalism, and it's why internationalism today lives here and not in the world. And so our task is to figure out how to take this feeling in us, this belief about ourselves, about each other, about the future, and turn it into places to be, bases to build, institutions from which we can fight and conquer the world. Cheers.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Fethi Nimr, and I am from Ramallah, Palestine, originally Jenin. Yeah, it's a tough act to follow. Thank you. I'm going to try to speak slowly because I know that when I get engaged, I'm going to start like verbal all over the place. I am honored and humbled to be among you all today, especially among these wonderful people I've been sharing bread with for the last couple of days, people who truly want to make the world a better place, and I imagine all of you do. But it also kind of breaks my heart in a way, because 2 years ago almost, I was in the same exact auditorium, and I was talking about the beginning genocide in Gaza. It had been only a few months since, only, of course, in genocide term, that's tens of thousands of people. And I know this is about left internationalism, so the topic is depressing to begin with, but I think we have a moral imperative to kind of be critical of ourselves at this point, and to say that from a Palestinian perspective, people who have lost basically their whole way of life in Gaza, not to count all the other ethnic cleansing campaigns. We could not stop the genocide in Gaza for 2 years. It was broadly broadcasted everywhere. It was incredibly transparent, even though the media tried very hard to censor, but it was clear what's happening, and that's reflected even in the opinion polls. So we need to critically re-examine, what does it mean, for example, that under Biden, now I know they're not, the Democratic Party aren't exactly the left, but for example, 80% of Democrats wanted a ceasefire under Biden. The popular will does not translate into policy action. So we need to emerge from our old mode of operation, of this awareness raising mode that we've been kind of stuck in for the last 2 years. The world knows. It's not about not knowing. It's that the cards are on the table, the sides have been chosen, and we should proceed from that point. The world are either complicit or don't care. But there are some wonderful positive examples that I want to really elaborate on in the discussion more. The student encampments in the United States, as mentioned, these are the effects that brought the hammer of repression down on the students. The unions and the ports, our comrades in the unions all over the world who shut down ports so they could stop weapons from going to Israel. These are material actions. Material actions. The state is more than happy to give you your permit. So lower my voice or sit down or slow down. I don't know. Okay. I thought I was being slow too. Okay. The state is more than happy to give you your little permits, for you to go sit in your little protest zone and to do our little, our little parade with still? Okay. Okay. So how y'all doing? Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I'll try to be slower. The state is more than happy to give you your little permits and to allow you to protest in a zone where you're allowed and everything, and you don't inconvenience anybody, and it's wonderful and nothing's disruptive. But after that's gone, 2 hours later, there's absolutely no evidence that you were even there. And yeah, there's a utility in awareness raising, but we have hit the wall kind of at this point. And direct, more militant action has been the only thing that has been making a difference. For example, the flotilla. People made a little bit of fun of it, saying it was a symbolic gesture for privileged Westerners with passports who are not going to, have any consequences, maybe a night in jail and then they'll be sent home. But there were so many ships that the Navy of the Israeli army was engaged with them and allowed dozens of Palestinian fishermen to go out to sea and bring loads of fish to a starving population that had not seen fish for God knows how many months. So it's these material actions that will really make the difference, both in support of Palestinians and also in carrying out a genocide, occupation, colonialism, much more difficult. And we can't be compromising on this. We can't approach the topic as if we're trying to make a compromise with these forces, because our enemies, and I emphasize our enemies, imperialism, colonialism, capitalism, they're maximalist. They don't begin from the point of view that they're going to reach a middle ground with us. Every inch we cede, they take it and they demand more. they're not going to be like, oh, you're being very, reasonable. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to do 80% colonialism now. It doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way. So this is a shift that we need to kind of adopt, in my view, as a part of the international left. I'm not interested in how many gates the wall has. I want to tear down the wall. Thank you so much.
Good morning. It's lovely to be back in Cape Town. Thank you, everyone, for coming out early on a Saturday morning. My name is Ruthie Gilmore. I have been in Cape Town many times, and I'm very excited to have played a part in gathering so many comrades from many corners of the world, not all the corners, just many, to think together for 6 days about what is to be done. I was very moved by Comrade Marcus. I'm not calling him uncle. I'm 75, so you ain't my uncle. With respect. Comrade Marcus talking about the collectives that are at the heart of movement, including the collectives that are at the heart of parties, which is to say at the heart of being able to do the kinds of things that Amy and Fatih have already spoken about. For example, I was extremely moved and not a little surprised when the flotilla, having encountered so much military opposition, caused workers in Italy to stage a general strike. Whether or not anyone had foreseen that, the institutional capacity to call and enforce a general strike existed, and it worked. One of the things I hope we can talk about here today and in our workshop these next few days is the relationship, if you'll allow me, between objective conditions, however we understand them, including the kinds of collectivities in which we were raised, in which we have fun, in short, the kinds of collectivities through which we organize, improve, and give meaning to our lives. And to think again, not from the beginning, but from what is now, how such collectivities already form part of the infrastructure necessary for the moral force of left internationalism to be real and palpable and to win, because actually I want to win. That means then that we're talking, among other things, about consciousness, which was very much a theme of Comrade, I can call him Uncle Neville's life and work. And that consciousness extended into so many corners of ordinary everyday life. We've been reminded a few times over the last couple of days, most recently by Comrade Neville, that Comrade Neville talked about how the time he spent with many other people on Robben Island was marked not only by certain kinds of presence, but the absence of the sound of children's voices. So as we think about the work we're doing in a situated in a school of education named for Neville Alexander, I think that thinking about how we study and learn together in all kinds of ways, informally as well as formally, is essential to building the necessary infrastructure and strength of left international institutions and parties. Amandla.
Beleza.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Olá, bom dia. Eu sou a Gisele.
Hello, good morning. I'm Gisele.
Iniciamos o encontro de hoje falando sobre a importância da família.
We started this meeting by speaking about the relevance of family,
E a minha família está aqui.
and my family is here.
E eu peço a bênção à minha mãe e minha orixá.
And I ask a blessing for my mother and my Orisha.
Sou uma mulher afro-latino-americana
I'm a Afro-Latino American woman
de uma religião de matriz africana em diáspora negra.
from a religion from African background
Em diáspora negra.
and the African diaspora, black diaspora.
E os desafios de construir comunidade em um outro mundo e resistir frente às violações do Estado.
And the possibility to build a community in other part of the world and face the challenge and the violence from the state.
Eu sou o sonho dos meus ancestrais de 400 anos de luta.
I am the dream of my ancestor of 400 years of struggle.
Os brancos do meu país perguntam como estamos vivos ainda hoje.
The white people from our country still ask how is possible that you are still living today.
A nossa resposta é o chão da comunidade e do território, a nossa família.
Our answer is the floor of our territory and the family.
A comunidade é o nosso projeto político de vida e de resistência.
The community is our project of life and the resistance.
O que liga as lutas nas favelas do Rio de Janeiro,
What linked the struggle in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro
as colônias mexicanas,
to the Mexican colonies,
os bairros colombianos,
the Colombian neighborhoods,
os acampamentos palestinos
the Palestinian settlement,
e as periferias da África do Sul
and the South African peripheral areas
é a força da nossa comunidade.
is the strength of our community.
Quando ocorre uma operação policial no Rio de Janeiro,
When the police do a kind of operation in Rio de Janeiro
a nossa proteção comunitária
or a humanitarian protection,
nos informa que a polícia está nos matando
tell us that the police are killing us
através de mensagens em WhatsApp, ligações ou conversas.
through the message from WhatsApp, links and conversations.
Criamos proteções comunitárias e populares
We create popular humanitarian protection
através de afetos,
through the feelings.
sentimentos.
Yeah.
Nosso projeto político não depende de estatuto,
Our political projects doesn't depend of status quo,
nem filiação,
neither affiliation,
nem pagamento de mensalidade,
pagamento,
de mensalidade,
neither the payment of mensual fees
ou assembleias coletivas.
or collective assemblies.
A nossa luta por vida
or struggle for life
é manter a comunidade forte e enfrentando um Estado que apenas nos mata todos os dias.
keep the community strong and face the state that are killing us every day.
A nossa revolução é estar de pé todos os dias e com nossos familiares.
Our revolution is to be alive and stand up every day with our families.
Obrigada.
Thank you.
Bom dia.
Good morning.
Meu nome é Sérgio Goulart. Primeiro, muito feliz de ter Gisele Florentino como uma camarada que constrói.
My name is Sérgio Goulart, and I'm very happy to have Gisele Florentino as a comrade.
Que constrói nosso projeto comunitário.
That build all communitarian project.
Chamado Iniciativa Direito à Memória e Justiça Racial.
Call it the Initiative for the Right of Memory and Racial Justice.
Eu sou historiador.
I'm a historian.
Então, as palavras e os conceitos são importantes.
So the words and the concepts are very important.
Logo, precisamos falar que o internacionalismo está vivo.
Then it's very important for us to say that the internationalism is living.
Se os estados insistem em nos violentar globalmente,
if the state insists in to attack us international,
nossa resistência também será e já é internacionalista.
So our resistance must be and will be international.
Nossa cooperação e solidariedade,
our cooperation and solidarity,
vai além das nossas fronteiras nacionais.
Goes behind our national borders.
Pois o inimigo é comum.
So we have a common enemy.
O capitalismo racial.
The racial capitalism.
Nós,
the enemy.
Organização de favelas.
We, the organization from the favelas,
estamos na luta com a Palestina.
We are side by side with the Palestinian struggle.
Com o movimento de boicote e desinvestimento.
With the boycott disinvestment project.
Em articulação com a rede para além do policiamento.
In articulation with the network beside the policing.
E o movimento 8 Passos para a Abolição nos Estados Unidos.
And the movement 8 Steps for the Abolition in the United States.
Com o Comitê Solidariedade a Cuba.
With the community for Cuban Solidarity.
Com o Julho Negro.
With the Black July.
Com organizações da Índia.
With the Indian organizations.
O povo Mapuche.
And the Mapuche people.
Palestina e Haiti.
Palestine and the Haiti.
E recentemente,
recently,
estabelecemos um diálogo com os caracóis zapatistas.
We had a link with the Palestine with the Zapatistas.
No Brasil,
in Brazil,
a esquerda não está nos partidos e sindicatos.
In Brazil, the left are not in the party and or in the union.
Que foram cooptados pelo neoliberalismo.
That were domesticated by the neoliberalism.
Mas estamos em movimentos comunitários de favelas.
But we are in the social movements, communitarian social movement in the favelas.
Terreiros.
Terreiros só sei em crioulo em português.
Instituições.
The ground, the space of religion of African background.
Quilombos.
Quilombo.
E aldeias.
And villages.
Sendo as mulheres negras.
And the black women.
As referências.
The references.
Desta luta coletiva.
Of this collective struggle.
Pois no Brasil.
Because in the Brazil.
quando blindados das forças policiais
when the armored vehicles from the police force
que já foram usados na África do Sul no apartheid
that has been used in South Africa during the apartheid
e estão nas favelas
are right now in the favelas.
São as mulheres negras que estão nas ruas fazendo esse enfrentamento.
So it's the black women that are in the street challenging this force.
Viva o internacionalismo e os internacionalistas.
Viva o internacionalismo and the internationalists.
Obrigado.
Hi, comrades. It's hard to speak after so many brilliant comrades. Thank you for coming out. I'm very humbled to be here. This is my first time in South Africa. I come from Germany. I was very humble. It's not my first time on the continent. I've been in the West mainly, in parts of Northern Africa, but it's my first time in Cape Town and in South Africa, and I was very humbled to come here. In Germany, as well as in many Western European countries, especially for Black working class, brown working class, migrant populations, the struggle in South Africa against apartheid has been such a crucial cornerstone with regards to politics of internationalism and liberation. And Neville Alexander's work particularly plays a crucial role in this, especially also the collective effort he was engaged in. I heard in Germany the first time from Neville Alexander because a comrade that was part of an anti-imperialist front and who was captivated for 15 years in prison wrote about him and engaged with his work and translated parts of his work. When I was asked to think about the question of left internationalism, I thought about many things because I think left internationalism is alive, although we're still recovering from many counter-revolutionary attacks. The counter-revolution of the late 60s and 70s, including the assassination of many organizations and leaders in the colonist zones, if you will, as well as in the imperial core, but also, and that is tied, the counter-revolution of neoliberalism, you know, fostering transnational capital, but also the imaginations in people's heads, so that people think that racism is something that you can solve on the individual level by just learning something or think about your privilege, instead of collectively organizing to smash structures, to fight structures, and to build something new. So I think these are just two examples of some of the counter-revolution we're still coming up against. But I think the history of internationalism teaches us a lot that is crucial in terms of the current struggle and of moving forward. And I think one thing is obviously, you know, that we don't have to play out against each other the party or the self-organized structure, because I think both play a crucial role. And we don't have to play out against, you know, like the struggle of labor and the struggle of those who we can consider you know, the reserve army of labor, the relative surplus population, those that are in the prisons, in the border, in the favela, those that are not employed and just actually are not even in a sense needed anymore for capital. Like it's our necessity to bring these forces together towards a global proletarian revolution. I do think we can learn a lot from anti-colonial, anti-imperialist internationalists. Actually, we can learn everything from them, because it is a continuation of that struggle. But I think we have to reconsider stuff as well. To me, one thing is obviously, you know, how to move beyond that counterattack. And that counterattack is ongoing. We see it in Palestine, we see it in Haiti, we see it in the Congo, we see it in Cuba. And we see it in Sudan. And yesterday a comrade talked about Sudan. And I think there's something very crucial with regards to what's happening in Sudan. Because it also shows us that our struggle against imperialism is against imperialism, but also against, some call it sub-imperial forces, you know, but we have to kind of consider what is actually happening with regards to different fractions of capital having different interests, inter-imperial concurrence, if you will. And the Sudan also teaches us, just like Palestine and Haiti as well, what role self-organization can really play. And this, for me, includes thinking through the contradictions of the nation. And this is something we've learned from transnational, especially transnational anti-colonial feminists on this continent, as well as others. And I want to end with the structure and the form. Because I think that the counter-revolution that is still ongoing, which is economic, which is political, which is ideological, has also massively destroyed and attacked our infrastructure in terms of form. Right? We think of, I don't know, if you want to think about the Bandung Conference or if you want to think about the Comintern, like we need to revive internationalist structures and form to kind of coordinate our counterattacks and our path to liberation for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa, and thank you to everyone for those amazing inputs. I think it's interesting to hear, firstly, Vanessa, thank you for acknowledging the intensity of the counterattack. I think it's very, very important to understand the enemy and to understand the ways in which even our imaginations have been under severe attack for the last, I guess, 60 years since that project. Is that right? Yeah, ongoingly, but since the 1970s in particular, and the relentless rise of a neoliberal capitalist agenda. And I'm also really interested in the shared conversation around form. What is the form? Where is the form? How does the living left in movements that is not currently in our parties or in our unions either invent ways to retake them or to find new ways of articulating that can actually generate the kind of power that Emmy was discussing, as well as Fatih. How do we not have it live in our imaginations, but actually find the kinds of forms that can be weapons to do the real work of interrupting capitalist value creation and the devaluation of people's lives that it simultaneously produces. So I'm wondering, we'll have just a few more comments to set us in conversation, and then we'll open to the floor. So if you have, and again, I'd ask us from the floor, if you're thinking about a question or a comment, keep it really focused. So would anyone else from the panel like to say something about what's been said?
May I? Yes. Okay. That's a great question, great point. And thank you, comrades, for getting us thinking together. Now I'm sitting down, I don't like it. All right, and thinking about form. One of the points I made, picking up from Fatih's presentation, was the fact that trade unions staged a general strike in Italy. That tells us something not about union as objectively a part of the blueprint everyone must follow, but as a possible model among models that together will enable us to rebuild our infrastructure. There are unions, there are movements that are not unions, there's even the odd political party. There are other formations that already exist that do all kinds of work that, again, enable people to make sense of, improve, and organize our lives that matter. And where I think our thinking comes in, and that thinking that we must do together in conferences like another Bandung every year, is to think about how best we can analyze the possibility within any given already existing formation, which might be already infiltrated by our comrades, even if they don't know yet that they are our comrades who have infiltrated it, or forms that we can innovate, not that we're inventing from whole cloth, but learning from the past, learning from history, but also learning from what our comrades have done in the favelas and what our comrades have done here in the shack dwellers movement and so forth, and figure out how those things go together. And there's one other thing I want to say, and that is that the counter-revolution has indeed been remarkably intense and isn't going to end anytime soon. And the counter-revolutionary forces have so much organized violence at their disposal and under their control. They make the weapons. They compel people to buy weapons from them. They use the weapons. As we see in Gaza, we see in Sudan and elsewhere. So as we think about our weapons, I'm not a pacifist, but I'm not. But we have to think about every possible kind of weapon we can use that will compel people to do things they otherwise wouldn't do, which is what power is. But doing that kind of compulsion doesn't necessarily mean terrorizing. My best friend makes me happy. I can't do that on my own. That is power too.
I'll stand as well. We'll just get in the habit of standing. And we'll stand and we'll talk slowly. One of the things that I really value about Ruthie's work is this return to history. I think because so much theory that we see now really values fake novelty. But this point that Ruth just touched on, which I think is so important, is that the significance of the historical tradition in which we all work. I don't think it's arbitrary that we're here as abolitionists and internationalists. And I think there's two purposes for that. I think there's two ways that abolition taps straight into the most important part of this tradition in this moment. I think firstly, it's Vladimir Lenin's lessons from What Is to Be Done, that the party coheres around the program, and abolition comes necessarily with a program. Tear that shit down and let those people out. And so necessarily we can't sit around like Foucauldians fucking meditating. I don't know what like Deleuze and Guattari, useless, right? The wizards of critical theory have no part in this. And so abolition forces us to think programmatically. We must, as Ruth is constantly reminding us, think about what are we actually going to do here? And the other element of this tradition that I think abolition touches on is Mao Zedong's lesson of the mass line. Of from the people to the party, to the people to the party, we refine our practice, we determine correct ideas through class struggle itself. And as abolitionists, who are we for? Are we for people with offices? Well, the people with offices don't go to prison. Are we for professionals, business managers? Those people are also not going to prison. We're for the people with the worst lives. We're for the people who are in the worst situations. And so we are having to meet needs. We're having to confront the lived reality of inequality, the lived reality of capitalist degradation, of the humiliations inflicted on your people and mine. And so we open up the field of class struggle to all of these areas. We break class struggle out of both the kind of wizards of critical theory and out of the hands of these kinds of bureaucratized, safe, leashed kind of appendages of the ruling class that tell us that they are our electoral representatives. And we make revolution something dangerous again.
Do I have to? Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this question of form and how much do we engage with the bourgeois state or how much we engage with people we see as reactionary, I think these questions have been highly context specific over the history. Like, what does it mean to, what is the form of you know, actually truly revolutionary collective consciousness? I think that would look different in the United States from, for example, than in Palestine, than in China, than in South Africa. In Gaza, they have neighborhood committees that were kind of this collective, you know, group. It's not like the Home Owners Association or any of that kind of stuff. Don't worry. It's kind of these neighbors taking care of each other. In the first Intifada, they had communal gardens, for example. And these communal gardens help people feed themselves. And if they could feed themselves, then they could have more time to, you know, resist colonialism, resist occupation. They wouldn't have to think about their children starving, which is honestly like a big thing that people worry about, of course. A whole third of the West Bank's income comes from working inside the Israeli economy, and as you know, exploited labor, paid much less than even minimum wage. And if you open your mouth, there goes your permit. You're not allowed to work anymore. So this by itself, hostage. So I think whatever form it takes, it needs to provide alternatives, community, family, a safety net. A safety net, and family in the broader sense, not the nuclear family, you know? Like the traditional sense that all of our, like as an Arab, a Palestinian Arab, when we talk about family, we're talking about extended families. We have subdivisions of subdivisions from the original tribe, you know? I always make this joke. My wife, I tell her, like, yeah, half the village is your father's family, half the village is your mother's family. It's just, I don't know how anybody meets anybody there. But yeah, so this is the form. But sorry, just one more minute. This is, yeah. Of course, sorry. Thank you. This question about should Palestinians engage, for example, in the Israeli High Court to try to get something canceled. There was this case of a friend of the family who had a demolition order against his house because it was constructed without a permit, and the permit had a 99.5 rejection rate. So it's almost impossible. This is the case for most Palestinians in the Area C. So he put through a motion through a human rights organization for an appeal towards this demolition. So I told him, are you serious? Why are you engaging? Why are you giving them legitimacy? Why are you this kind of idea of that they can give you some form of justice? He said, no, but by the time they get back into the appeal, this buys me 3 months to move my family out, to get something set up, to see how I'm going to deal with life. So sometimes it's nice to say that I don't want to engage in anything. We have to remain pure. We have to do this. But sometimes tactically, and I emphasize this tactically, not as a replacement, but as a stopgap. And I think this is something that when we're preached nuance and pragmatism, sometimes they're asking us to accept lower, not rather than make things work for now and then demand higher, which is ironically the whole history of Oslo and the Palestinian negotiations. We're asked to release our rights, not as a stopgap towards something better, but towards you should be happy being under the boot of this situation. Thank you.
Primeiro, eu não vou me atrever a ter uma resposta. Primeiro, eu não vou me atrever a ter uma resposta.
First, I will not dare to answer.
Mas, a partir da primeira fala do camarada que iniciou hoje,
but for the first speech of our comrade today,
sinto com o coração,
I feel with my heart,
que talvez a forma
that maybe the form
parta da família e da comunidade.
Come from the family and the community.
E com todas as questões,
and with all the challenges,
o conceito comunitário traga,
with all the problematics that the communitarian concept brings.
Talvez esse possa ser o caminho.
Maybe this is the way.
Mas isto não quer dizer,
but this doesn't mean
que não precisemos
that we don't need
dialogar,
to dialogue ourselves
e articular
and to articulate ourselves
com outras formas.
With the other forms.
Talvez,
maybe,
o que precisamos construir,
what we need to build,
é diálogos contínuos,
is a permanent dialogue
dessa diversidade de formas,
of several ways, several different forms,
para tentar construir,
in order to try to build
programa,
a program
que consiga
that is able
criar escala,
to create a scale.
Obrigado.
Thank you, Kelly and comrades. I think with regards to form, I completely agree, Francesco. I think it's like many self-organized structures have already forms in place that we need to, I think, bring stronger in conversation. To me, what was really powerful with regards to border abolition and migrant justice movements in Europe has really been, also parts of tribunals, for instance. And I know here tribunals have played a crucial role as well. Also, they can be definitely co-opted and only be symbolic. But in the context, for instance, in Europe, where police abolitionists, where the families learn to then engage with other families, and then learn to also kind of, families whose loved ones were killed by the state. Well, like in 2019, we did a larger organizing conference where we brought families together from Turkey, from France, from Germany, from Italy, and it was very important. And they could actually exchange also strategies, how we can use the legal side as a side of tactical battle to politicize further as well. So these kinds of people's tribunals, I think, are also part of a form. I do think internationalist meetings remain important to also attend to the context that was so importantly raised, right? And I think after the war in Ukraine, we started conversations with anti-militarist, abolitionist feminists from Ukraine, from Russia. We had folks from Sudan, Palestinian feminists joined to kind of think about what does anti-militarism mean in our various contexts without engaging with the enemy, like with the powerful enemy of my enemy, that it is not necessarily my friend, right? So with regards to Ukrainian feminists, sorry, Sonia. So to have a conversation where, for instance, it was important that Ukrainian feminists who are anti-militarists were thinking clearly through how to, push back against the attack of Russia without siding with NATO. Because these are things we can only figure out by engaging with the contextual struggles. So I think attending to the contextual struggle is crucial here. But I do think we come up against new struggles as well. The climate catastrophe that is unfolding is going to force people, 260 million people more, to move until 2050. And this is not by attending to wars. I'm just talking about so-called disasters out of the climate catastrophe. Obviously, this is then also related to wars around resources and what have you. So I think the question of movement of people, and that's what I meant also with how do we think through the nation, is one of the new questions of our time. I think that is very crucial. That's also saying that, again, here, Pan-Africanism, a radical left Pan-Africanism is helpful here.
Thank you. We're going to open up now to some comments, questions, continuing the conversation. I just would like to also acknowledge that, for me, one of the most important acts of internationalism that I've seen in the post-apartheid period in South Africa was when Abahlali baseMjondolo took on Operation Dudula in the streets of Johannesburg. It was, and we have Comrade Sabu here from Abahlali, and it's been wonderful to have you with us, Comrade. That action, which was grounded political internationalism in the streets, was only possible because this is a movement of decades that had been fighting and struggling over housing that meets the direct needs of people collectivizing in struggle around a matter of great importance in our country. So the capacity to stand with more people on the streets than Operation Dudula brought was because of that other struggle that was going on. So I think this is exactly the kind of, what do we have at hand? What struggles do we have at hand that are already ongoing that we can find out how to bring together and make into a movement of movements? Yeah. So just to acknowledge that action of enormous internationalist importance that we have here. All right, there's a lot on the table, and there are a lot of amazing people in the room. So can we continue this in the spirit of conversation? I see Raul and Anthony.
Yeah. I was discussing the issue this morning already with some comrades, and I come from an internationalism that was very strongly influenced by the idea of national liberation, Latin America, but also in the Basque Country or in Europe. And I really feel challenged to rethink all my idea of emancipation and liberation in the last years, because I think this idea of a liberation that walks through the idea of the nation state has really come to an end. I think the idea that we can build up real liberation by more national sovereignty, I think this is wrong. And I was introduced to a comrade of Vanessa, Nandita Sharma, and she was really brilliant in her work, because she explains that today we have new forms of racism based on the distinction between citizen and migrant, or even more radical, between native and migrant. And she asks us to think about liberation from the point of the view of the global to return to the idea of the global proletariat from the idea of the migrant, of the non-native. Yeah, and I think this is really the most internationalist idea. This is really returning to the beginning of the working class movement in the 19th century. To not ask about nations. And this is what really, she's a little bit connected to the discussion of Peter Limbaugh and Marcus Rediker, who in their books, I'm not sure the title in English, the Hydra, the history. Yeah, it is. So the idea of a working class that is multiracial, from many spaces, and that constructs itself by solidarity. I think this is really an important thing, and a value that we have to retake. That our movement, more than any other thing, needs the idea and the practice of solidarity. And this is why yesterday, spontaneously, I was also very impressed what Spo told us about this mobilization against this new black xenophobia. Yeah. I think it's because of that. So yeah, I think this would be perhaps the idea. I'm not saying that we have to, because I'm still very connected to these political movements, inclusively to political parties and that act in a national state context. So I'm not against being there and fighting there, but I think we have to rethink our horizon, and we have to return to this language of the 19th century, of really thinking about global proletariat and about the migrant as the figure, the main figure in this. We have to reject this idea that you have to have a right to have rights. Yeah, that the citizenship is the right to have rights, and this is the first thing we have to reject, I think. And this would be a really revolutionary and internationalist idea.
Hi, my name is Anthony. My question is, on the one hand, about this question of compromise, and on the other hand, about internal politics in self-organized spaces. What I hear from the panel from multiple people is that, what I hear from the panel from multiple people is that we need to be better organized on our key principles, which should be non-negotiable, and we should be more strident and more militant in direct action on these principles, which I think I'm fully in support of. What I worry sometimes is that this attitude of being uncompromising, when turned inward, can become a kind of dogmatic, we're uncompromising about being uncompromising inside our own spaces. And my own experience in left organizing spaces so what I'm suggesting is that when we take an uncompromising attitude towards our political opponents, we can start to valorize the idea of being uncompromising in itself. And when we turn it inwards inside our spaces, this can be become something like a purity politics or a gatekeeping. So my personal experience of many left organizing spaces is that we end up spending much more time doing internal politics contestation than actually fighting the fight that we came together for. And so I have a very practical question, given that we have a panel of very experienced organizers, I think. Do any of you have anything to say about techniques that have been helpful in navigating these kinds of internal politics in your spaces?
Bom dia, camaradas. Pode? Não? Pode?
Mic check.
Eu queria agradecer aos companheiros e companheiras pelos elementos.
I want to thank the comrades and the elements.
E queria trazer 3 pontos para o debate.
I want to bring 3 points to contribute for the debate.
Inspirada em autores que nos ajudam a fazer a leitura da realidade.
Inspired by the actors that will help us to reading the reality.
Primeiro, trazer Mariátegui para a conversa.
First of all, to bring José Mariátegui.
Revolucionário da América Latina.
A revolutionary from Latin America.
Que nos ensinou que a luta de classes na América Latina não será cópia nem decalque.
That taught us that the class struggle in Latin America will not be a kind of copy.
Por isso, não temos a obrigação de ter os partidos e sindicatos tal qual o marxismo nos ensinou. E isso não é uma crítica.
So we are not forced to have the party and the union like the Marxism taught us, but this is not a critic.
Por isso, tenho acordo com os elementos da mesa sobre as várias formas organizativas.
So I agree with the elements, the members of the panel, that we have different forms of organizing.
Por isso, penso que uma questão que fica nesse ponto é qual a cultura política que podemos tecer para ganhar corações e mentes.
So what the most important is the political, cultural policies that will help us to be enabled to win minds and hearts.
Porque nossa causa é bonita, é justa e precisa ter alegria.
Because our struggle is a good struggle, is beautiful, and is above of all is required to have happiness, to be joy, to have a joy.
Queria citar exemplo que é as feiras de reforma agrária que o MST tem realizado no Brasil.
So I want to give an example about the popular selling that the MST has been organized in Brazil.
Tem festa.
Of course, there's a party. Debates.
E comida boa.
And the good food.
Produzida nos assentamentos.
That we produced in the settlements.
Avançando, queria trazer o pensamento de Karl Marx quando ele diz que as ideias
To advance, I want to bring the ideas of Karl Marx when he said that the ideas
têm que virar força material.
the ideas must become a material force.
E um exemplo que a gente conseguiu que as ideias virassem força material
One the example that we be able to see that the ideas to become material force
foi no período mais duro, que foi o período da pandemia.
Was in the more tough situation that was during the COVID,
onde a gente conseguiu ressignificar o conceito de solidariedade.
when we were able to re-signify the concept of solidarity.
Porque solidariedade só acontece entre a própria classe trabalhadora.
Because solidarity just happened between the working class.
E por último, para não demorar,
And for the last, not to be so long,
queria falar da frase de Che, que diz que quando o extraordinário se torna cotidiano, é a revolução.
I want to bring a quote of Che Guevara that said, "When the extraordinary become a daily life, the revolution will come."
Porque em nossos países, em nossas organizações, temos feito ações extraordinárias no cotidiano.
Because in our country and in organization, we have been doing action, extraordinary action in our daily life.
Exemplo, a flotilha.
For example, the flotilla.
Exemplo, as embarcações na cúpula dos povos.
The example of the shipment of people in Cuba.
Como que usa a cultura do povo para fazer luta bonita e ganhar corações e mentes.
How to use the people culture in order to win the mind and the arts and make the things beautiful.
Por isso a pergunta que faço é: qual a cultura política que podemos desenvolver nesse internacionalismo abolicionista?
So my question is, what are the cultural politics that not the cultural politics, the cultural politics that we can be able to develop in this internationalism abolitionist?
Quais as lutas que nos atravessam?
Which kind of the struggle that crosses?
E quais as convergências?
And which convergences?
Em função da unidade da luta.
Related with the question fundamental, that's unity.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
The MST also has a lot of answers. Okay, I see. I've seen 4 more hands, 5 more hands. What do you think? Do you want the hands here too? Do you want to respond directly now, or? Okay, we'll have 1 or 2 responses from here, and then we'll go to the next round.
Qual o seu nome?
What's your name?
Não.
Anthony.
Anthony. Se eu entendi,
if I understood,
eu vou tentar dialogar.
I will try to dialogue with you.
Me parece que ele falou das competições e dos desafios dentro das próprias instituições.
I think, if I'm wrongly correct me, that you spoke about the competition, the challenges inside the organizations.
A partir do Brasil, o que a gente tenta estabelecer em todos os espaços políticos, primeiro,
from the standpoint of Brazilian context, what we start to establish at the first moment, first of all,
é a possibilidade de uma política entre nós do dissenso.
It's the possibility to have to materialize a politics between among us with the dissensus.
Porque no Brasil existe uma hegemonia nos espaços de uma política do consenso.
Because in Brazil context there's a hegemony, a politic of hegemony of consensus, a domination.
E essa hegemonia disfarça as contradições e os problemas.
This kind of hegemony mask and mask the contradiction that exists in reality.
É isso.
Is this?
Último ponto para dialogar também com o que foi trazido sobre a
The
cultura
last point to dialogue with the other question that you were brought.
política. A gente falava em internacionalismo e hoje a gente ouviu muito internacionalismo abolicionista.
One thing that is interesting that we used to speak about internationalism, but today we have been listening today about abolitionist internationalism.
No Brasil, temos visto que a palavra e o conceito abolicionista
In Brazil context, we have been seeing that the concept and the word abolitionism
tem sido essa possibilidade de pensar um projeto político.
has been the possibility to think about a political project.
Porque mulheres que lutam por processos de reprodução sexual, por direitos sexuais reprodutivos,
Women that struggle for process of the sexual reproductive,
moradores de favelas que fazem o enfrentamento à violência policial,
people from the favela that facing the police violence,
o MST que trabalha um processo de soberania alimentar,
the MST that works with the food sovereignty,
entre outros,
among others,
tem um horizonte ainda de libertação e emancipação.
they still has the main goal, the liberation and the emancipation.
E eu vejo que o conceito de abolição
And I think that the abolition as a concept
é tudo isso.
is all this.
Hakima, and then Sid, and then Comrade at the back. Oh, and then Mavish. We'll take those four. Thank you. Hakima.
Thank you. Mine was because,
And just say who you are.
hi, Hakima. Fateh, you challenged us and said we weren't able to stop a genocide. And that failure feels, can you hear me? Yeah, deeply heavy in all of our hearts. We haven't been able to stop the imperialist grip on the DRC that's cost more than 5 million lives. We haven't been able to stop the war on Sudan. But I think we can also look forward and we see what US imperialism has in store. We see what they're doing in the Caribbean, in Venezuela. And one of the things that's on my mind, and Fran Sergio raised it, was Cuba. We cannot afford that defeat. And I believe the US imperialists intend to invade Cuba at some point. So as internationalists, I have a question for us of how can we be prepared? What can we do? And how can that be something that we do stop?
Sydney Luckett. Raoul answered most of the question that I was going to ask, so I won't go through that. But I just want to give I wanted to just give an example of where a break from a nation state is actually happening. There are many examples, I'm sure. And Raoul probably could tell us more about that. But my favorite example is the Kurdish struggle, the PKK. That's why I'm wearing this. They transcend 4 nation states and have an organization across those nation states. I just wanted to mention it. And thanks for bringing up the whole issue of nation states, Vanessa.
Thanks. PKK in the room. Comrade over there. And then we're going to Mavish, and then coming to Shuaib. Okay, we might have to pause there, but go ahead, comrade.
Thanks, comrade. Mine just wanted to bring this conversation into the room, maybe around past like global experiences around this phenomenon that is troubling me. How do we move from just resisting as the left, but to people-centered solutions? I'm saying this because I'll make an example. I'm involved in the land and housing struggle here in Cape Town. I am fully aware that the victory of my struggle includes a big company getting a tender to build houses and making them much more richer. Because our struggle is only just focused in the resistance, not about when we get there, what do we do? And there's a long history about that in South Africa, almost all struggles where we resist and make the right winger more richer. Even from the settlement of our democracy, because we had a struggle for many, many years. But when we got into CODESA, the solutions that were there made apartheid companies much more richer than they were during apartheid. In fact, they now say they could have given us democracy probably much, much earlier if they knew this was going to happen. Even globally, we talk about the resistance in Palestine, right? The solution that we have is Trump with the peace deal in Palestine. Because in talking about the solutions, we're not really involved in that discussion. How do we want this to look like at the end? Similar, there's a problem now in DRC and Rwanda. They want to discuss it in Washington, discussing a peace deal, but they were signing trade agreements that are making American companies much more richer. So is there any examples maybe from across the globe that we can learn from about how do we move our struggles from resistance to people-centered solutions? Because there seems to be, our struggle is around people resisting and right-winger solutions. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much to the organizers for a fascinating and important panel. My name is Mavish, and the question I ask is, thinking with anti-militarist struggles out of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the region, especially in the aftermath of the war on terror there, and also counter-revolutionary Cold War era anti-communist sort of moves against radical movements before 9/11 as well. My question is about the danger of geopolitical co-optations, which was brought up around the Ukrainian feminists, but also one can ask it in terms of the PKK-Palestinian struggle relationship, which has been at various points tense, but also they've been in solidarity with each other through history. In the South Asia context, the Kashmiri struggle is very important, but the Pakistani military also supports the Kashmiri armed struggle. As a result, anti-militarist struggles within Pakistan find it challenging to form solidarities with the Kashmiri struggle in a way that doesn't reproduce the hegemonic narrative of the nation state and the military state. So the Afghan feminist struggle is another example, gets co-opted against the liberation of Afghanistan. And there's several other examples around the world. And I'd ask you to think about that. Another example recently in terms of Palestine that came up among Kurdish and Turkish comrades was, should the Gaza tribunal be held in Turkey or not? So how does one navigate this as part of an abolitionist international? Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. My name is Shuaib, and thank you for this panel and for the thank you to the panel for the your enormous contribution. You know, Marx had enormous respect for capitalism as an entity which could, and its ability to endure. And what we're seeing now is the constant reincarnation of capitalism. And I think we're still probably looking at waging old battles when capitalism continually reincarnates itself. And part of it is kind of going back in a sense of techno-feudalism. And, you know, that's the title of Yanis Varoufakis's book. And we're seeing the hold that AI and some of these tech companies are having over the world, and this new form of capitalism that's transnational. Takes us back to history when you looked at Dutch East India Company, which was probably the first company to own a country. So now we're going back to places where companies are owning countries rather than, you know, them being kind of national. So this, I guess my question is about these new forms of capitalism, the reincarnation of capitalism, and how do we challenge it at these new forms rather than still having old solutions for new problems which are not working. My other kind of question was around, I mean, we've got a long tradition, and we speak about we speak about, you know, learning from Marx and from Lenin in a commentary, and, you know, from the Paris Commune or whoever it is. But the other key question is, what can we learn from the right? And if you look at what the right has done in the last 30 to 40 years, and the kind of enormous kind of hegemonic project, you know, which reminds me of Mahmoud Mamdani's talk he gave at UCT. And he said one of the most significant decolonial projects in Africa, you know, he said one of the most successful decolonial projects in Africa was the Afrikaner imposition of Afrikaner hegemony in South Africa. They created culture, they created institutions, etc., etc. Anyway, the point I'm making is, what can we learn from the right, who've got this hegemonic project, which is moving at great speed across the US, Africa, Asia, etc. My last point is around, we had a dig at Foucault, you know, but okay, but to me, sure, we don't learn activism from Foucault, but Foucault assists us in unearthing the archaeology of power in the prisons, in the asylums. And if you speak about abolitionism, I mean, I think reading Foucault and deconstructing that is critical for our work.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm Judy. And my question is, if we reflect on the solidarity, the Palestinian solidarity actions in this country, and I think probably also in other parts of the world, they're very fragmented. And often many of them involve feeling good for the people who participate in them. You might be standing in a demonstration or a protest, but you leave and it really doesn't have much impact on advancing the Palestinian liberation struggle, let alone the collapse of imperialism. So my question really is, how do we begin to really identify the elements of a much more strategic approach to the way in which we plan and organize our resistance to what is currently one of the grossest forms of imperialist domination and violence? What are the critical elements of a more strategic approach that would involve building coherence and have a bigger impact? Thanks.
Thanks so much, Judy. All right, we're going to start with Gisele. You've got a mic. Go ahead. Do you want to? Oh, you had a question. Do you want to say something and then do you want to?
Yeah, I can try to help translate. It was just, but you want me? Shall I say what I? Okay. But very briefly, it was first of all, thanks to everyone. And like, yeah, it was just a brief comment, then we can continue to talk about this later on, but I couldn't avoid intervening because, yeah, you mentioned what happened in Italy during these months, and I'm very grateful to what you shared, because I think what happened there is that it was a lot of collective forms of constructions of the conditions under which that huge mass mobilization became possible, has become possible. So obviously the unions have been, and particularly certain union, the USB has been at the forefront and has launched like this global, the strike, but like there had been huge discussions in the precarious assemblies in the universities, in the student movements, in the in the feminist movements, in the migrant justice movement. So like there have been different collectives that have been actively contributed for that to happen. And so like all those people who were in the streets, came through those collective structures. And that was powerful, was being able to articulate like the genocide and like all what, like the struggle in solidarity with the struggles of our comrades in Palestine as like strictly connected to what we are living and to the forms of oppressions that we are living. Crossing the Mediterranean by the flotilla, and encountering the safe and rescue boats of NGOs who are struggling against the necropolitics of borders that is using the same technologies that are being used to kill Palestinian lives. I mean, it's such a powerful moment of internationalism in action, like struggling against deadly imperialist, border imperialist regimes that are killing our lives, right? And articulating how that has to do with our lives as workers in different like sectors, how has to do with our lives as precarious researchers in the universities that are funded to invest on military infrastructures, leaving people on the streets without being able to afford for a dignified life, right? I mean, that has been what has happened. So it has happened that, the struggle of our Palestinian comrades, it has become for us also a way to articulate our struggles against all these oppressive forces that are slowly killing us. So yeah, just wanted to say that too on this. And yeah, I can translate.
Na verdade, eu queria compartilhar uma angústia que se tornou uma movimentação nossa da iniciativa.
In reality, I would like to share Should I continue? Okay. I would like to share an anguish that has become crucial and central to me.
Como falar sobre abolição em uma sociedade em que uma pessoa que é moradora de favela vive em um espaço de 5 quilômetros, no máximo, e que nunca saiu deste território.
How to talk about abolitionism with someone from a person who lives in the favelas, who lives within 5 square meters and confined
kilometers, never get that.
That lives confined within a territory of 5 kilometers and has never been able to to get out of that space, of that territory.
Sem acesso à infraestrutura de acesso à água, a bons empregos, a direito à cidade e à habitação e a trabalho digno.
And that has been prevented from having access to water, to sanitation, to dignified labor, and to dignified life.
Como construir engajamento e consciência crítica com moradores de áreas tão precarizadas em que a sua urgência é comer e sustentar seus filhos.
How to build critical consciousness and engagement, critical engagement with people who lives in areas where the main concern, the key concern is surviving. So ensuring their survival.
A partir disso, criamos um espaço chamado Terreiro Abolicionista, que é um espaço de experimentação, discussão, formação política e ensaios de emancipação.
Okay. So starting from this, we created a space which is called Terreiro Abolicionista, which is a space of mutual training,
formação política,
of political education,
emancipação,
of emancipation,
experiências coletivas,
of collective experiences,
e atuação política.
And of political action.
E quando falamos sobre atuação política, não é restrito às esferas do Estado, mas sim política do cotidiano.
And when we're talking about political action, we're not restricting it to state state-related politics, but we're talking about everyday politics.
Uma ação específica durante 5 semanas reuniu 25 mulheres negras de favelas que não tinham atuação política anterior para discutir abolicionismo.
So, for instance, an experience and initiatives with 25 women from favelas without previous formal political engagement came together for 5 weeks to discuss and to collectively experience and abolition.
Para pensar o impacto da violência policial em todas as esferas da sua vida, desde o não acesso à casa, a um trabalho ou ao transporte dos seus filhos.
To think about police violence and how it affects all the domains of their lives, from
acesso ao trabalho, transporte ou cuidado com seus filhos.
From their housing conditions, for their access to transports, to the life of their children.
Como discutir liberdade com pessoas que não acessaram ao registro civil básico de direitos sociais.
How to discuss freedom with people who weren't able to get access to the Civil Register of Fundamental Rights.
E após 5 semanas, o resultado não foi de busca por direitos sociais, e sim de luta para terminar com o Estado.
So after 5 weeks, the outcome of their discussions was not to look for social rights, so to struggle to ask for social rights, but to struggle to dismantle the state.
E hoje essas mulheres se tornaram multiplicadoras em suas comunidades, criando novos espaços abolicionistas.
And now these women have become multipliers in their community spaces to multiply and to build abolitionism and abolitionist struggles.
E essa é a nossa construção de legado e memória abolicionista.
And this is our position as as a constitution of legacy of abolitionism. Yeah, and memory. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. There are so many excellent points of discussion. I mean, I can't give even one of them the justice they deserve in the discussion, let alone. Okay. There are so many wonderful questions that is very difficult to address one adequately, let alone all of them. But I believe, Hakima, you asked me a question, and I don't want you to misunderstand. I don't want you to feel like I am laying blame on the international left. It's not like that. I live 2 hours away from Gaza, and I also, I don't exclude myself from the international left. And I am not saying this as if laying blame, but rather as there's no moral, aspect to this. It's kind of an objective evaluation of where we failed, and we have to have a very sober view of where we failed so we can succeed. And revolution, liberation is a history of losses until victory. And it's not going to be one big battle where we win. It's going to be an accumulation. Perhaps our closest thinker to Steve Biko in Palestine, his name is Basil Araj, was also a student, intellectual, and resistance fighter. He said that a mosquito can't win against a dog, but 1,000 mosquitoes over multiple days can exhaust even the biggest animal. So just wanted this to be clear. I think the questions about the nation state and borders and new forms of capitalism and colonialism and such, I think they're quite interconnected, because the borders today simply do not exist for many in the world, but they exist for the majority. Depends on the piece of paper you have. It depends on what education you have. What's the difference between a tourist and a vagabond? It's money, So the capital flows through the borders while people starve at the borders. So I think we cannot combat this system without a significant also internationalist look towards combating these things. And one big aspect of it today also is the new surveillance technology, AI. And I'm sure you're all familiar with literature about how to blow up a pipeline that used to be popular in the past. And it's not far-fetched to talk about how to blow up a data center in the future, depending on how AI is going to be used to as a theoretical experiment. But yeah, we are unfortunately going towards very, very dark times, and we need to prepare ourselves as if we are in an existential war for capitalism. I argue that as the West is relatively in decline, we're starting to see the signs of it. It can hold on for decades. It's not like an event. But this is the period that Gramsci talked about. The old world is dying, the new world is struggling to be born, and now is the time of monsters. And unfortunately, one of the biggest areas for this monster to be free, as the death rattle of this, Western hegemony is in Sudan, it's in Congo, it's in Palestine, and we're going to see, unfortunately, combined with ecological disaster, we're going to see a lot of difficult times ahead of us. And I think we should stop putting our stock in this institutional post-World War II system that we were led to believe can solve our problems, and start actually planning for the worst, unfortunately.
You. I'm going to disagree with Comrade Fatih. Nothing theoretical about it. Go blow up a data center. I will joyfully donate to your bail fund. I wanted to address this question up here about how do we get from resistance to remaking the world. And it's right to resist, and you should resist. All of us are resisting every day. But you also can't resist a new world into being, right? And I think it's that gap, that kind of incommensurable spot where your politics of your life, your existence will reach a gap after which there's no clear plan. There's no, I filled in all the forms. I had the meeting with my boss. I got told no. Now I'm going to throw a brick through the window. And it's that brick moment where we exhaust conventional politics and start to break things that is so important. So Lenin gives us formulation in The State and Revolution that our task is not to just take the state machinery, not to just take the world that's been given to us and run it as well as possible for ourselves. Because this world's a fucking meat grinder, right? Our task is to grab the world and smash it into pieces and build new institutions, new governments, new states, new things that serve us rather than serving the people who made them. Because people who made them are fucking vampires, right? So this formulation comes from the Cultural Revolution in China. We have two jobs. We have to smash the old world. We have to build a new world. That's how we shift from one register to the other.
Me deu.
Yes, I'm ready, sorry.
Me deu vontade de compartilhar uma coisa aqui que não fez parte aqui da discussão, mas que para mim faz sentido agora compartilhar.
I feel like sharing with you something that hasn't been part of the conversation, but it makes a lot of sense for me to share now this with you.
Para pensar a forma.
To think about form.
Que é a contradição do conceito dos direitos humanos.
Which is the contradiction inherent in the concept of human rights.
Os direitos humanos têm sido produzidos pelo imperialismo.
Human rights have been produced by imperialism.
A partir do discurso de paz.
Starting from the discussion around peace.
Para construir a guerra.
To actually build war.
O discurso dos direitos humanos.
The discourse around human rights.
Muitas das vezes disfarçado por questões ambientais, com discurso de questões ambientais.
Oftentimes under a discourse of environmental issues.
Tem sido responsável por milhares de remoções de pessoas dos seus territórios.
It has been responsible for for the remotion of people from their territories.
O conceito dos direitos humanos hoje nos serviria para pensar uma forma? Pergunta.
My question is, the notion of human rights, do you think it can serve us today to think about form? Question mark.
Por fim, o que Gisele Florentino compartilhou do terreiro abolicionista.
Finally, what Gisele Florentino shared with us about the terreiro abolicionista.
Estamos retornando a uma tradição marxista.
We're going back to a Marxist tradition.
De fomento ao ódio ao Estado.
Of fomento, como é que eu posso traduzir? Okay, to fostering hate towards the state.
Obrigado.
Thank you.
Thank you for all these really crucial questions. It was already said that, yeah, it's really hard to even do justice to all of this, which I can't, so I won't even try. Nation, I learned from one of my most fierce Palestinian comrades that obviously Palestinian liberation does not necessarily mean national liberation. And I think that's crucial when we talk about what people actually mean when they talk about freedom and liberation and how we get there. And I think that's where the migrant is so important, like you mentioned, Raul, but also the kid in the favela, right? Also, like it's the people that are forced to move, but it's also the people that are stuck. Yeah. Right? In the prison, even at the borderscape, because not everyone can cross the border. In the favela, in the township, you know, the people that often rendered superfluous and can thereby be killed. So I think without wanting to romanticizing a new revolutionary subject, I think that's what an abolitionist international attends to. And I do think we have to work through the nation like radical Pan-Africanists did, and also like I've also learned from the quarter struggle, which also has its contradictions and problems. Like everyone, I personally learned a lot from it. We had comrades who, you know, gave their life to defend the revolution in Rojava. And that doesn't mean it doesn't come with its contradictions. I do think an abolitionist international revisits the spirit of Bandung from below. And that also means figuring out, right, how do we deal with the contradiction in Afghanistan? How do we attend to, you know, Ukrainian anti-war feminists without siding with NATO, but also not other kind of, you know, sub-imperial projects, which are militarized to the teeth, right? And how do we never ever get in liaison with the imperialist beast, which is U.S. imperialism? And that's hard. And I think to do that, yeah, sorry, difficult. Oh. Go in bed with, or I don't know, like cuddle with, yeah? And sometimes this means having harder conversations also regularly. And reviving our Bandung spirit conversations. And then move towards strategies, tactics, and forms of solidarity. And that's maybe, Hakima, the last point. I do think with regards to Cuba, but also Venezuela, we can't wait for the US. Like, I at least know that some people in Europe would say, you know, where's the huge anti-war? Like, we have to do it now. Like, we have to flood the streets now. And I know, at least in Europe, many are then looking to the US, you know. Obviously, there's not, I mean, there is resistance going on, but I think we have to really move now. And then also in relation with continuation to prevent further genocide in Palestine and other contexts as well.
Comrades, it falls to me to close us out of this session. As we have shared this morning, we have lived now in a long period under the global malallocation of symbolic, conceptual, and material resources. To say there is a global malallocation does not mean, however, to say that all the material resource controllers also have their hands on all the concepts we need and all the symbols that make concepts come alive for people. That's not the case, but it seems that way. So the kinds of things we've heard about today from Comrade Haza, from the MST, from other comrades around the room, I think make quite clear something I also think we all already knew, but it's good to be refreshed in our sense of solidarity on a Saturday morning. Everything we've been talking about starts with land. Everything. Abolition is about land, not about prisons and crime. It's about land. It's about the ability to move around or stay put. There is, therefore, a permanent contradiction which need not be antagonistic between self-determination and open borders. Permanent contradiction. But as we figure out through dissensus, through struggle, in which we are able to say and more frequently than we say but, we realize that analytically, we are constantly in the churn of capitalism, saving capitalism from capitalism. All of this new forms of, that's what it is. And it isn't actually all that new, it just seems new because some of the technologies appear so fresh and unfamiliar. That means then, to take up the question of learning from the right, oh my God, comrades, they learned from us. They learned from us to start with meeting needs, while always connecting across struggles and making big plans. They learned that from us. We must take it back, not by shouting at them, but by being busy from the ground up, as everyone has said. And that then leaves us the question that Hakima put to us: what will it take to defend Cuba, thinking together, strategizing together, and maybe going to that island together? I don't know, that might be where we die instead of in somewhere else. But thank you. Thank you, we're gonna die anyway. A luta continua.
All right, we have the enormous privilege of having Comrade Sbu Zikode from the president of the Abahlali baseMjondolo movement, which is a now 180,000 strong Shak dwellers movement across the country. Which, as he reminds us, is not a good thing that it's growing. But still, it is also a good thing that the capacity to organize is still with us. And so, Comrade Sbu, we invite you to the front, please, to celebrate the amazing publication of these two books. If anyone needs to stretch, please feel free. If anyone is desperate for the toilet, it's upstairs, but we encourage you to stay in the room for time. Thank you.
And then also just to say that as soon as we're done with the book launch, we'll be going up for lunch. So if you can hold on for, can you hear?
No, what we don't have is a translator because Sonia went to pee.
So we would love to not lose everybody. There's a quick transition for an hour and 15 minutes.
So you talk. I mean, we'll be introducing it. You me. Cool. Yeah. So just announce that the book will be on self-esteem.
The hug.
No, I don't. Thank you. I just have to go back to the conference place.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice place. Good, very well. Thank you. As usual, I think. We have this one.
Testing 1, 2.
I think it'll be at least mostly in her lifetime. But
How are you?
Come to hear the good news.
I don't have I have to wrap. Yes. I have I think
I might get to it in relation to rent. If you could not continue to rent, how did the rent?
the opportunity for everybody to learn about capitalism. Everybody. From what they're doing at the moment. Yep.
I haven't taken over anyone. And even in the faith political outcome, the understanding of where I want to take the project. I sometimes also look at the
I love this. Yeah.
Okay. Can those of you standing around please grab your seat? The book launch is about to start. Anthony, Emmy, Sid, let's go. Please come and sit. There's lunch after this. You can talk. Derek and Patrick, can you please sit down?
Sonia. Sonia, tá pronto para começar? Okay.
You can greet Cebu afterwards. We're really late. Okay, last call for comrades to please sit down. Oh, yeah. If you can hear me, clap once, clap twice. Thank you. We're about to start.
Could you shout in the hall? Because there are a lot of people not in here. Thank you. All right, comrades. Better late than never. Okay. People who need translation from English to Portuguese, make sure you have a headset. It's afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm still Ruthie Gilmore. I think all of you were here this morning, so no extensive introduction of me. We are here today to celebrate the launch of 2 books by my dear, dear, dear comrade, friend, person who changed my life, Surplus Radical. The books are We Are Still Not Counted as Human, which is available online, and we can give you details. And then the book about the 20th anniversary of the Abahlali movement, 20 years of courage and struggle, which will be available for sale upstairs from our comrade Andre Marais at Surplus Books, but he's brought them here. So I will say a couple of words. I have to put one thing down and pick another thing up. All right, so Sibusiso Innocent Zikode was born 50 years ago. I know this because he shares a birthday with my sweetheart. Not the same year, though. In KwaZulu-Natal, in central KwaZulu-Natal. He went to elementary school there, was a Boy Scout, as we know. And he enrolled at the University of Durban, Westville, which has since become part of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where he studied in the law faculty. However, like the case with so many students around the world, he did not have adequate resources to pay his fees. So he went on to do other things, including working at a petrol station, if that's true. Okay. People tell you things and you don't, I don't mean he told me, but others tell me things. What brings us together here has everything to do with what Comrade Sbu was doing in Durban now more than 20 years ago, was being a part of the Kennedy Road settlement, the struggle over that settlement, achieving the capacity to stay put. Remember, we were talking about stay put or go wandering, stay put, and to fight for electricity and other services for the settlement. And it was thence and there that Abahlali was born. This book chronicles the struggle. It's very beautiful. I have a few words in it, which I will not read out loud to you, other than to say, this movement is abolition in action.
Thank you, Comrade Ruth, the People's Professor. Yesterday, I had a privilege and enjoyed some benefits of being a local. Amongst the great panelists that I shared the platform with yesterday, the People's Professor asked me to have a last word just because I was a local. And I enjoyed the fruits of being a local. But then today I see the real locals, which have kept me going. I want to mention some names of the comrades that I see amongst many beautiful, wonderful comrades who have helped us kept going. I see Comrade Jared Sachs, who's here, Comrade Siviwe, Comrade from Jazz, Comrade Nokolo, Comrade Nomfundo. There's a couple of wonderful comrades that are here. I just wanted to acknowledge those comrades. They have been part of this great journey. The struggle for land and housing has been paid in blood. It has not been easy. Some of us sitting here are carrying deep scars. But today I was told that it is a moment of celebration, but a celebration that will not be doing justice to the celebration without us reflecting a little back from a humble beginning to where we are. I have never thought myself that 20 years later, Abahlali, the Shack Dwellers movement, will be able to produce a book, write its history, produce knowledge, protect vulnerable groups such as your migrant communities, the LGBTQI+ communities, the elderly and the young people. I am forever grateful with the journey that Abahlali have undertaken. And this work has not been easy. I will be saying this many more times. Abahlali have lost great comrades who have put their life and made ultimate sacrifice. I myself have escaped many attempts on my life. But through some mystery reason, I am still alive. Because at some point, we must conclude what we have started. When I became a shack dweller myself, when poverty warned me, when I left out of the former University of Durban, Westville, I saw people that were as poverty-stricken like me, where they belonged. Then I became a resident of the Kennedy Road informal settlement. This was in the late 90s. When I got to Kennedy Road, life was normal. And people were welcoming. That is why I was able to stay there, because people were friendly and people were just people. But what provoked me, living amongst the people of Kennedy Road informal settlement, just few things. One, what I noted was that there was only one man in the entire settlement that had a car, that had a spaza shop, your fast food, that was a committee in his own. He was a chairperson who was never elected. He was just in charge of the settlement because of the power that he possessed at that point in time. The only man that had a shop, the only man that had a car in the settlement, the man that was in charge of the settlement without any democratic process that elected him into that position. He represented the community. And the first thing that I questioned when I arrived in Kennedy Road was his power and the mandate. But the second thing that I noted was that there was a shack fire, was still new in Kennedy Road. There was a shack fire that originated from one family, and suddenly the entire settlement was on fire. But because I was still new, and there were only few water standpipes that saved more than 12,000 people, so we had to fetch water to try and put the fire off. Although we were closer to the CBD, but it normally took more than an hour for the emergency vehicles to come to the settlement, whether you are calling a police or an ambulance or firefighters. It takes more than an hour. By the time it comes, the entire settlement is on fire. But in that shack fire, it got out of hand and we had to retreat. And we watched the fire, the flame. And suddenly there was this big burst. And I thought it was some kind of an electrical wire, or it was the gas of the fridge that made this big noise. It said, and then I look around and people were saying, but this must be Umamukuzwayo's head. This is what normally happens when a person's head gets blown in a shack fire, because that was normal. I was still new. And I thought it was some kind of a fridge or a gas. But I discovered that Mam Kumalo, an old lady who was on her crutches, who lived with disability, could not escape a fire. She was burnt into ashes while we were watching. And the local people were familiar with that. I was traumatized. But few months after that, a baby was eaten by a rat to death. Again, it was normal. There was a big rat because Kennedy Road happens to be situated next to a big dump. And there were big rats migrating, but also there was a methane gas that was migrating, causing constant shack fires. Now, when the mother of the baby just left, within a minute, the baby is crying. When she returns, she sees this big red running. When she comes in, the baby's skull was bleeding, like ubuchopho bomntwana. Impuku suck ubuchopho bomntwana, the brain of a child. Now, because it was on the Friday afternoon, the clinics were closed in that particular area because poor people don't get sick over the weekend. When the child was rushed to the clinic, it was closed. And the next day, when she was going to be taken to the Addington Hospital, baby Gweha passed on. So these are stories and many incidents that were normal at the time. During that time, we were told that poor Black people could not think for themselves, to a point that someone else from somewhere else was required to think for them, represent them, speak on their behalf, take decision for them. That was the case when we started. We started organizing, not knowing that we were playing with fire. As you know, promises were made, promises were broken. The commercial value of land was put before its social value. Profit was put before human needs. And Abahlali emerged out of that. At that time, the African National Congress was seen as the only vehicle through which you can communicate your worries. Remember, this was 2005, only 10 years after our democratic dispensation. So what we did, we engaged in what we call out-of-order politics, where we decided that we are going to democratize the settlement, do what is necessary for our community. Now, organizing outside the state control and outside the African National Congress at that time created enemies for us. We were not allowed to organize. We were not allowed to speak to the media. We were threatened, and the state from the onset became hostile to us. So I thought I should just go through that history. We've never imagined that 20 years later we will still be struggling. But we also didn't know that at least 20 years later we will be able to produce a book. Now, the books that we are launching today, there are just two of them. One is obviously here with me. It's such a beautiful book, as colorful as my t-shirt, as the wonderful hearts of Abantu Abahlali Matshotshombeni. Now, this book is a reflection, and obviously it's called 20 Years of Organizing in the Shanty Towns of South Africa, 20 years of courage and struggle. So this book has come out of a series of discussion, reflection in our communities, in our monthly general assemblies, in all spaces and platforms that Abahlali creates on a weekly basis. The author of the book is Abahlali themselves. It is not Sbu. Unfortunately, it is not the people's professor next to me. Although she had some clever weights in the book, because you got to have some, some clever and wisdom stuff in the book. So this year on the 4th of October, Abahlali was celebrating its 20th anniversary. And from the beginning of the year, we were thinking about what is it that we want to celebrate with part of what we come up with was to honor the poor people, particularly the favelas, the shack dwellers, those who are marginalized in the Cape, in Johannesburg, all over South Africa, those who are ignored, those who are confined in our dark corners of our society. But we also thought that it was important to thank many of the comrades who have journeyed with us. We have no other words to thank them. So we thought this book would be a gift to you all, to the struggling people from around the world. It provides some lessons, difficulties, challenges, not answers, unfortunately, but some practical steps that have enabled us to survive for 20 years in the midst of extremely violence that the state has unleashed on people. So we want to say this book is a gift to all struggling communities from around the world. It is our contribution. It has been a book that we have laid our lives with. 25 comrades have laid their lives defending umhlaba, that is land, decent housing and dignity. So we want to say this book, for us, it is a gift to you. It is a gift to struggling communities. It should be viewed as the heritage to be cherished and protected in order to be reached by future generation. We've made history. We may not have won many victories, but at least we have kept and become the people's voice, and we remain the people's movement. We have been able to restore hope to many people. There are many victories that I will not be able to share. But in conclusion, with the book, we think as Abahlali, the Shack Dwellers movement, we were able to organize, and today we are sitting with over 180,000 members in South Africa. And some people tell us this is one of the biggest social movements to have emerged in post-apartheid South Africa. Now, when the membership grows every day, we get worried. Comrade Kelly was saying this. We are not happy. It's an indication of how much needs to be done. People have nowhere else to go. Their lives have been vandalized every day. So our contribution is not only for us to have access to land, to decent housing and dignity, but it's to make sure that we humanize the world. In humanizing the world, we've been doing almost everything that you've been discussing over the few days here. Practical so. It has not been easy in doing that. So many families today will tell you, I have what I call a home for my children just because of Abahlali. So Abahlali has become our joy, our pride, our comforts. Unfortunately, and I was very impressed with the question from comrades, when do we move from the position of resistance and start providing the alternatives that we want? We have begun that conversation, not only the conversation, but it's something that we are now doing. We have accepted that the state does not exist. Where it exists, it does not serve our interests, and therefore we must do something, at least for our communities and for the next generation. So I want to thank you, one and all, for every contribution that you have done. Many of the comrades who have made a remarkable contribution to Abahlali are not here. These are international comrades. Now, through you, we want to relate that message of deep gratitude. Abahlali continues. We have braved many wars and violence against ourselves, but we've managed to survive. It's not easy, but we stand. Some of the comrades here knows that in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, where I come from, we do not have freedom of walking around because suddenly we have discovered that we are carrying a gold. I didn't know that I was carrying a gold, that sometimes you need to engage in a safety and security protocols. Otherwise, your life will just end and you become another statistics. Violence has been normalized, and unfortunately, we are not as free as we would be, at least when we leave that province which has become the capital of violence in this country. But we are so grateful. We recognize that our victories have been through the support of many comrades and people who have really made possible for us to continue to survive. So please enjoy the book. It is found in this wonderful bookshop up there, through the generosity of Comrade Andrea here, who will be handling the book for those who may want to buy the book. It's very cheap. The book is only 200 Rand. It's kind of a solidarity token. You know, that's not money. It's not pesa. It's not money. I don't know how many dollars, but it's something very less, because it is a gift from us. There are lessons, obviously, that could be learned. No, leading such a movement is not easy. It requires energy, it requires courage, but it requires humility. I think that is why we were able to survive for the past 20 years, noting that some of the movements, like your MST and others, have gone for 40 years. We so wish we can get there. We so wish the movements here in Cape Town, your housing assemble, the Reclaim the City that we were watching yesterday, and many others can continue to grow and become the hope of many homeless people in this province and in this country. With those words said, please enjoy the book. Thank you.
Thank you. So, comrades, Comrade Spool will be happy to sign your book. Anyone who's with the Abolition International Workshop who doesn't have cash, don't worry about it. I can take care of it. And come up and have your book signed and take it home and use it. Oh, do people have questions? I thought we were supposed to go straight to signing. Some questions? Here's a question. Ask your question.
You got to wait for the mic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tivan. Thank you very much for this. I feel like I'm one of the most ignorant people in the room, and everyone has been so welcoming. I really appreciate that. I think Abahlali is the biggest beacon of hope for me in South Africa in terms of the work that we need to do. And I've been working with a group of activists who want to try and make a difference from within the halls of power. And I think in South Africa, we have, to a larger extent than in many other countries, democratic mechanisms that we can lean on. And I'm wondering if Abahlali is considering contesting the political space or supporting movements like that. Because I feel like the state is sort of like, it's a mechanism of class warfare. And I feel like we shouldn't just cede that ground. I feel like we should have real democratic institutions that can leverage the power that is vested in the state to get to a point where we want to be.
Bom dia. Eu vou falar em português, porque eu acho que eu consigo me expressar melhor no que eu quero dizer.
Good morning. I'm going to talk in Portuguese to express better what I want to say.
Quero agradecer ao camarada. Eu fico muito emocionada de te escutar. Estava muito ansiosa também por esse momento do livro. Vou querer levar alguns para o Brasil, para distribuir em alguns coletivos, tanto dentro da universidade quanto na cidade.
I would like to thank you, the comrade. I'm gonna take a lot of books to take home and to distribute to folks in Brazil, and I'm very emotional with your talk.
Me chamou muito a atenção quando você traz os casos das crianças, quando a gente fala das lutas por moradia e das lutas por terra, porque quase a gente não fala de criança quando a gente está falando disso.
I was really shocked with the stories that you brought about the children, because when we talk about struggles, many times we don't talk about children.
E quando você falou de criança, me lembrou de duas coisas.
When you talked about the children, it reminded me two things.
A primeira, quando a Ruth Gilmore estava com a gente no Maranhão, que é um estado amazônico no norte do Brasil.
The first, when Ruthie was with us in Maranhão, it's a northeast state of Brazil.
E a gente estava indo para uma periferia de São Luís, que é a capital do Maranhão, e a gente passou numa lombada. Estava numa lombada indo para a periferia de São Luís. Lombada. I don't know how can I say lombada. How can I say lombada? The things to stop the car. Brakes. Okay.
And we were on the streets, and we were driving the car and the periphery of São Luís, and we stopped over a speed bump.
E a Ruth me ensinou que isso foi um dos primeiros movimentos urbanos do Black Panthers para que as crianças pudessem brincar nas ruas dos Estados Unidos.
And Ruthie taught us that that was one of the first movement from the Black Panthers, so the cars would stop a little bit, so the children could play around more freely.
Então é a luta por terra, mas também é a luta pela dignidade nessa terra, que é algo que aparece simples, mas é tão revolucionário.
So it's the struggle for the land, but also the struggle for simple things in our land, which is as revolutionary as the biggest things.
A outra coisa que eu lembrei é uma história que é muito comum no Maranhão.
The other thing that I remembered is another story which is very common in Maranhão.
Nós temos uma das maiores empresas mineradoras neoextrativistas, imperialistas no Brasil, chamada Vale.
We have like one of the biggest companies, mining companies in Brazil called Vale, very valley called, which is very imperialistic.
E ela tem um trem que vai de São Luís do Maranhão até as partes mais inner parts of the Amazon, até as partes mais
Deep,
profundas da Amazônia.
So they've built like a big rail to get the train from the deep parts of Amazon to the sea through São Luís.
E não é um trem que a gente pode usar, que a população pode usar.
And that's not a train that we as a population can use.
Porque é um trem que leva e traz minérios da Amazônia para o porto, para a Europa e para os Estados Unidos e agora para a China.
Because that's a train that serves just for bringing minérios, rocks, different kinds of rocks from the deep Amazon to other parts of the world, so to US, Europe, and now mostly China as well.
E esse trem sai de uma zona periférica de São Luís, onde muitos meninos e meninas, crianças, não têm infraestrutura urbana para serem protegidos.
So this train always departure from the peripheral part of São Luís, where a lot of children, boys and girls, they don't have any kind of infrastructure to
Para viver a infância.
to live their life, their childhood.
Então a brincadeira desses meninos é entrar nos vagões.
They play by like getting in the parts of the train.
Porque eles não têm praça, eles não têm lugares para que eles fiquem, então eles vão brincar entrando dentro desses vagões cheio de minérios.
So they don't have like parks, they don't have places to play, so they get inside the trains full of this kind of rocks to play.
E vão em direção à Amazônia profunda, adormecem porque são crianças.
So they get inside the train and they go inside the deep forest, the deep Amazon, and they fall asleep. They don't have.
Eles dormem, adormecem.
Yeah, they fall asleep.
E muitos morrem porque quando eles acordam, ou eles estão tombados porque a empresa não sabe que tem criança e vai tombar o vagão e eles morrem de uma queda muito grande.
So many of them, they wake up, they don't know where they are, or they die because the train goes like that and no one knows that those children are there.
Ou eles morrem sufocados pelos minérios que caem em cima deles.
Or they die like suffocated because of the rocks that fall over them.
Então, uma cidade que não dá infraestrutura e terra para essas crianças é uma cidade que assassina essas crianças. Então, o abolicionismo é também falar sobre a infância. Obrigada.
So a city that don't give space and infrastructure for those children is a city that kills those children. So abolitionism is about that as well.
E eu aprendi isso com você hoje. Obrigada.
And I learned that with you today. Thank you very much.
I'll be quick. As God. Wathini kabata umgozakalanga ndindana ukunene. Very quickly, firstly, since we're in a university, quick thing to correct. Comrade Smoo is the president of Abahlali, not the Secretary General, like it says here. I think maybe that correction is important. Comrade Smoo, I don't have a question. I just want to speak on something, just a small thing. Because I think in building this movement, you did not end only with Abahlali and housing issues. I think there's a platform there called Coalition of the Poor, where Abahlali organizes broader than just the housing issue. I think it's something worth mentioning. And please maybe conclude by a word of maybe advice from your experience. We're in Cape Town, where the housing crisis is as terrible as in eThekwini and in a most untransformed city, because you can find the poor living in the inner city in Durban. You will never find that here in Cape Town. And all the housing programs are aimed at pushing people further to the margins. I don't know how many movements do we have here organizing around that issue. Maybe from your experience, what can you say to these movements? They need to try, so that at least we can get a different reality. Because right now, I think so much is not shifting. And yet all these movements are putting a lot of energy doing good work, but we're just not breaking the wall. What would you say maybe these movements need to take to look at? Thank you.
We've got one more here and then.
Eu vou devagarinho. Tomei coragem para falar por conta do emocionante depoimento do amigo.
I decided to get up and talk because of your emotional talk.
Eu saúdo a todas as pessoas aqui presentes.
Shout out to everyone present here.
Eu falo aqui como mulher negra, Yalorixá, educadora e jornalista.
I talk about, as a journalist, as a black woman, as a Yalorixá.
Falo também como zeladora de terreiro de candomblé, o Ilê Axé e Jomim.
I also talk as a keeper from terreiro, as we were talking earlier today.
E há quase 30 anos caminha entre a fé e a luta.
It's been almost 30 years between faith and struggle.
Entre o cuidado espiritual e a ação social.
Between cuidado espiritual, spiritual care and social action.
Entre a floresta da Tijuca, onde estamos baseados, e as encruzilhadas das grandes cidades que nos atravessam.
Between the forest where we are located and the big cities where we are living.
Na comunidade onde eu atuo,
in the community where I act,
ser mulher é sobreviver diariamente.
Being a woman means surviving every day.
A ausência de tudo que deveria ser básico.
The absence of everything that should be basic.
Falta saneamento.
We don't have
falta escola.
School.
Falta acolhimento.
Care.
Falta comida.
Food.
Falta paz.
Peace.
E sobra violência física, institucional, emocional e espiritual.
But we have a lot of spiritual, emotional, and many kinds of different violences.
Muitas mulheres nas favelas,
many women in favelas
e periferias do nosso país,
and the peripheries of our country,
andam com o corpo curvado,
walk with the bodies bended like that.
Não apenas pelo cansaço,
not just because they are tired,
mas pelas violências normalizadas.
But also because of the normalized violences.
A violência doméstica que ninguém vê.
The domestic violence that no one sees.
O racismo que se disfarça de silêncio.
The racism that is masked by the silence.
O Estado que se faz ausente.
The state that makes itself absent.
Quando mais nós precisamos.
When we most need it.
Algumas mulheres chegam chorando em pedaços.
Some women get to us crying.
E outras não conseguem nem mais chorar.
And other women cannot even cry anymore.
E é aí que o terreiro se faz casa.
And that's the moment that the terreiro becomes their homes.
Porque o terreiro, para além do espaço religioso,
because the terreiro, beyond the religious space,
é território de escuta.
It's a territory for listening.
É onde o choro encontra colo.
Is where the cry meets the lap.
Onde a palavra encontra silêncio.
Where the word meets the silence.
Onde o corpo encontra folha, tambor e tempo.
Where the body meets leaves, time and.
Lá nós não apenas cuidamos do espiritual, nós curamos o que o mundo quebra.
We don't say that.
O quê?
Fala essa última frase.
Nós não apenas cuidamos do espiritual.
We don't take care just the spiritual part.
Nós curamos o que o mundo quebra.
We produce the cure that the world breaks.
Com banhos, rezas e conversas, com acolhimento, alimento, presença.
With presence, with spiritual showers, with talkings, conversations.
Com o saber das mais velhas.
With the knowledge from the elders.
E o vigor das mais novas.
And the strength from the youngest.
Como a dor de cada mulher que pisa naquele chão.
With the pain that from each woman that steps on that floor.
Este espaço aqui é muito importante.
This space is very important.
E
this space here.
E que fique registrado o que eu vou dizer agora.
And I want to register what I'm going to say now.
Que o terreiro é muitas vezes o lugar onde essas mulheres podem ser ouvidas sem ser julgadas.
That the terreiro is the place where those women can be heard without judgments.
Onde podem descansar.
Where they can rest.
Sem serem olhadas atravessados.
Without being looked in a very strange way.
Onde podem existir sem se defender.
Where they can exist without have to defend themselves.
E assim mesmo, apesar das ações,
and even like that,
nós somos alvos de perseguição.
And even like that, because of the, we are also target of persecution.
Sofremos ataques.
We suffer attacks.
Temos nossos espaços invadidos, queimados.
We have our spaces burned. We have our spaces invaded.
Expulsos.
We are sometimes evicted and violated.
Somos marginalizados.
We are marginalized.
Até nas políticas públicas.
Even in the public policies.
E dizem querer promover equidade.
That says that they are trying to promote equity.
Mas seguimos.
But we go on.
Porque onde o mundo fecha a porta,
where the world closes the door,
nós abrimos caminhos.
We open the ways.
Nosso lema na minha comunidade,
our goal, what we say in our community,
é onde nos cortam, nós brotamos.
Is so I'm going to try to say that. What we say in our community is that when you have a flower or a tree, and then you cut it, that's the space where you blossom.
A nossa cura não é imediata nem mágica.
Our cure is not immediate or magic.
É lenta.
It's slow.
É coletiva.
It's collective.
É ancestral.
It's from the ancestors.
É feita com as mãos.
It's made with our hands.
Com a palavra.
With the word.
E com a fé.
With faith.
O que o terreiro oferece é o que
the terreiro offers
é o que o Estado deveria de garantir.
Is exactly what the state should be guaranteeing.
Cuidado.
Care.
Dignidade.
Dignity.
Escuta.
A place to be listened.
E pertencimento.
And belonging.